Good evening, my friends. It is Friday evening, the last night of the weekday, and the last night for our story this week. We continue with The Phantom of the Opera, Chapter 13, A Master Stroke of the Trapdoor Lover. Raoul and Christine ran, eager to escape from the roof and the blazing eyes that showed only in the dark, and they did not stop before they came to the 8th floor on the way down. There was no performance at the opera that night, and the passages were empty. Suddenly, a queer-looking form stood before them and blocked the road. "No, not this way," and the form pointed to another passage by which they were to reach the wings. Raoul wanted to stop and ask for an explanation, but the form, which wore a sort of long frock coat and a pointed cap, said, "Quick, go away, quickly." Christine was already dragging Raoul, compelling him to start running again. "But who is he? Who is that man?" he asked. Christine replied, "It's the Persian." "What's he doing here?" "Nobody knows. He's always in the opera." "You're making me run away. For the first time in my life, if we really saw Eric, what I ought to have done was to nail him to Apollo's lyre, just as we nail the owls to the walls of our Betrin farms, and there would have been no more question of him. My dear Raoul, you would first have to climb up to Apollo's lyre. That is no easy matter." The blazing eyes were there. "Oh, you are getting like me now, seeing him everywhere." What I took for blazing eyes was probably a couple of stars shining through the strings of the lyre. And Christine went down another floor, with Raoul following her. "As you have quite made up your mind to go, Christine, I assure you it would be better to go at once. Why wait for tomorrow? He may have heard us tonight. No, no, he is working, I tell you, at his Don Juan triumphant, and not thinking of us. You're so sure of that you keep on looking behind you. Come to my dressing room. Hadn't we better meet outside the opera? Never. Till we go away for good. It would bring us bad luck if I did not keep my word. I promised him to see you only here. It's a good thing for me that he allowed you even that. Do you know," said Raoul bitterly, "that it was very plucky of you to let us play at being engaged?" "Why, my dear, he knows all about it. He said, 'I trust you, Christine. Monsieur de Chagny is in love with you and is going abroad. Before he goes, I want him to be as happy as I am.' Are people so unhappy when they love?" "Yes, Christine, when they love and are not sure of being loved." They came to Christine's dressing room. "Why do you think you are safer in this room than on the stage?" asked Raoul. "You heard him through the walls here. Therefore, he can certainly hear us." "No, he gave me his word not to be behind the walls of my dressing room again, and I believe Eric's word. This room and my bedroom on the lake are for me exclusively, and not to be approached by him." "How can you have gone from this room into that dark passage, Christine? Suppose we try to repeat your movements, shall we?" "It's dangerous, dear, for the glass might carry me off again, and instead of running away, I should be obliged to go to the end of the secret passage, to the lake, and there call Eric. Would he hear you?" "Eric will hear me wherever I call him. He told me so. He is a very curious genius. You must not think, Raoul, that he is simply a man who amuses himself by living underground. He does things that no other man could do. He knows things which nobody in the world knows. Take care, Christine, you are making a ghost of him again." "No, he's not a ghost. He's a man of heaven and earth. That is all." "A man of heaven and earth? That is all? A nice way to speak of him. And you are still resolved to run away from him?" "Yes, tomorrow. Tomorrow. You will have no resolve about it? Then, Raoul, you must run away with me in spite of myself. Is that understood? I shall be here at 12 tomorrow night. I shall keep my promise, whatever happens. You say that, after listening to the performance, he is to wait for you in the dining room on the lake." "Yes." "And how are you to reach him, if I don't know how to go out by the glass?" "Why, by going straight to the edge of the lake." Christine opened a box. took out an enormous key and showed it to Raoul. "What's that?" he asked. "The key of the gate to the underground passage in the Rue Scribe." "I understand, Christine. It leads straight to the lake. Give it to me, Christine, will you?" "Never," she said. "That would be treacherous." Suddenly Christine changed color. A mortal pallor overspread her features. "Oh, heavens!" she cried. "Eric, Eric, have pity on me." "Hold your tongue, Raoul." "Hold your tongue," said Raoul. "You told me he couldn't hear you." But the singer's attitude became more and more inexplicable. She wrung her fingers repeatedly with a distraught air. "Oh, heaven! Oh, heaven!" "But what is it? What is it?" Raoul implored. "The ring, the gold ring he gave me." "Oh? So Eric gave you that ring?" "You know he did, Raoul. But what you don't know is that when he gave it to me, he said, 'I give you back your liberty, Christine, on condition that this ring is always on your finger, as long as you keep it. You will be protected against all danger, and Eric will remain your friend. But woe to you if you ever part with it, for Eric will have his revenge.' My dear, the ring is gone. Woe to us both." They both looked for the ring, but could not find it. Christine refused to be pacified. "It was while I gave you that kiss, up above, under Apollo's lyre," she said. "The ring must have slipped from my finger and dropped into the street. We can never find it. And what misfortunes are in store for us now? Oh, to run away!" "Let us run away at once," Raoul insisted once more. She hesitated. He thought that she was going to say yes. Then her bright pupils became dimmed and said, "No, tomorrow." And she left him hurriedly, still ringing and rubbing her fingers, as though she hoped to bring the ring back like that. Raoul went home greatly perturbed at all he had heard. "If I don't save her from the hands of that humbug," he said aloud as he went to bed, "she is lost. But I shall save her." He put out his lamp and felt the need to insult Eric in the dark. Thrice over he shouted, "Humbug, humbug, humbug!" Suddenly he raised himself on his elbow. A cold sweat poured from his temples. Two eyes, like blazing coals, had appeared at the foot of his bed. They stared at him fixedly, terribly, in the darkness of the night. Raoul was no coward, and yet he trembled. He put out a groping, hesitating hand toward the table by his bedside. He found the matches and lit a candle. The eyes disappeared. Still uneasy in his mind, he thought to himself, "She told me that his eyes only showed in the dark. His eyes have disappeared in the light, but he may be here still." And he rose, hunted about, went round the room. He looked under the bed like a child. Then he thought himself absurd, got into bed again, blew out the candle, and the eyes reappeared. He sat up, stared back at them with all the courage he possessed. Then he cried, "Is that you, Eric? Man, genius, or ghost? Is it you? Is it you?" He reflected. If it's he, he's on the balcony. Then he ran to the chest of drawers and groped for his revolver. He opened the balcony window, looked out, saw nothing, and closed the window again. He went back to bed shivering, for the night was cold, and put the revolver on the table within his reach. The eyes were still there, at the foot of the bed. Were they between the bed and the window pane, or behind the pane? That is to say, on the balcony? That was what Raoul wanted to know. He also wanted to know if those eyes belonged to a human being. He wanted to know everything. Then, patiently, calmly, he seized his revolver and took aim. He aimed a little above the two eyes. Surely, if they were eyes, and if above those two eyes there was a forehead, and if Raoul was not too clumsy, the shot made a terrible din amid the silence of the slumbering house. And while the footsteps came hurrying along the passages, Raoul sat up with an outstretched arm, ready to fire again if need be. This time the two eyes had disappeared. Servants appeared, carrying lights. Count Philippe, terribly anxious. "What is it?" "I think I have been dreaming," replied the young man. "I fired at 2 stars that kept me from sleeping." "You're raving. Are you ill? For God's sake, tell me, Raoul, what happened?" And the count seized hold of the revolver. No, I'm not raving, Besides, we shall soon see. He got out of bed, put on a dressing gown and slippers, took a light from the hands of a servant, and opening the window, stepped out onto the balcony. The count saw that the window had been pierced by a bullet at a man's height. Raoul was leaning over the balcony with his candle. "Aha!" he said. "Blood! Blood! Here, there, more blood. That's a good thing. A ghost who bleeds is less dangerous." He grinned. "Raoul, Raoul, Raoul!" The count was shaking him as though he were trying to waken a sleepwalker. "But my dear brother, I am not asleep." Raoul protested impatiently. "You can see the blood for yourself. I thought I had been dreaming and firing at 2 stars. It was Eric's eyes, and here is his blood. After all, perhaps I was wrong to shoot, and Christine is quite capable of never forgiving me. All this would not have happened if I had drawn the curtains before going to bed." "Raoul, have you suddenly gone mad? Wake up." "What? Still, you would do better to help me find Eric. For after all, a ghost who bleeds can always be found." The count's valet said, "That is so, sir. There is blood on the balcony." The other man, servant, brought a lamp, and by the light of which they examined the balcony carefully, the marks of blood followed the rail till they reached the gutter spout. Then they went up the gutter spout. "My dear fellow," said Count Philippe, "you have fired at a cat." "This misfortune is," said Raoul, with a grin, "that it's quite possible. With Eric, you never know. Is it Eric? Is it a cat? Is it a ghost? No, with Eric you can't tell." Raoul went on making this strange sort of remarks, which corresponded so intimately and logically with the preoccupation of his brain, and which at the same time tended to persuade many people that his mind was unhinged. The count himself was seized with this idea, and later the examining magistrate, on the receiving of the report of the commissary of the police, came to the same conclusion. "Who is Eric?" asked the count, pressing his brother's hand. "He is my rival, and if he is not dead, it's a pity." He dismissed the servants with a wave of his hand, and the 2 Chagnays were left alone. But the men were not out of earshot before the count's valet heard Raoul say, distinctively, emphatically, "I shall carry off Christine Daae tonight." This phrase was afterwards repeated to Monsieur Faure, the examining magistrate, but no one ever knew exactly what passed between the 2 brothers at this interview. The servant declared that this was not their first quarrel. Their voices penetrated the walls, and it was always an actress called Christine Daae that was in question. At breakfast, the early morning breakfast, which the count took in his study, Philippe sent for his brother. Raoul arrived silent and gloomy. The scene was a very short one. Philippe handed his brother a copy of the Epoque and said, "Read that." The Viscount read, "The latest news in the faubourgs is that there is a promise of marriage between Mademoiselle Christine Daae, the opera singer, and Monsieur le Vicomte Raoul de Chagny. If the gossips are to be credited, Count Philippe has sworn that, for the first time on record, the Chagnys shall not keep their promise. But, as love is all-powerful, at the opera, as and even more than elsewhere, we wonder how Count Philippe intends to prevent the Viscount, his brother, from leading the new Margarita to the altar. The 2 brothers are said to adore each other, but the Count is curiously mistaken if he imagines that brotherly love will triumph over pure and simple." "You see, Raoul," said the Count, "you are making us ridiculous. That little girl has turned your head with her ghost stories." The Viscount had evidently repeated Christine's narrative to his brother during the night. All that he now said was, "Goodbye, Philippe. Have you quite made up your mind? You are going tonight with her?" No reply. "Surely you will not do anything so foolish. I shall know how to prevent you." "Goodbye, Philippe," said the Viscount again, and left the room. The scene was described to the examining magistrate by the Count himself, who did not see Raoul again until that evening at the opera, a few minutes before Christine's disappearance. Raoul, in fact, devoted the whole day to his preparations for the flight. The horses, the carriage, the coachman, the provisions, the luggage, the money required for the journey, the road to be taken. He had resolved not to go by train, so as to throw the ghost off the scent. All this had to be settled and provided for, and it occupied him until 9 o'clock that night. At 9 o'clock, a sort of traveling barouche, with the curtains of its windows close drawn, took its place in the rank of the rotunda side. It was drawn by 2 powerful horses, driven by a coachman whose face was almost concealed in the long folds of a muffler. In front of this traveling carriage were 3 Brahms, belonging respectively to Carlotta, who had suddenly returned to Paris, to Sorelais, and, to the head of the rank, to Comte Philippe de Chagny. No one left their barouche. The coachman remained on his box, and the 3 other coachmen remained on theirs. A shadow in a long black cloak and a soft black felt hat passed along the pavement between the rotunda and the carriages, examined the barouche carefully, went up to the horses and the coachman, and then moved away without saying a word. The magistrate afterward believed that this shadow was that of the Vicomte Raoul de Chagny, but I do not agree, seeing that evening, as every evening, the Vicomte de Chagny was wearing a tall hat, which hat, besides, was subsequently found. I am more inclined to think that the shadow was that of the ghost, who knew all about the whole affair, as the reader will soon perceive. They were giving Faust, as it happened, before a splendid house. The Faubourg was magnificently represented, and the paragraph in the morning's Epoque had already produced an effect, for all eyes were turned to the box in which Count Philippe sat alone, apparently in a very indifferent and careless frame of mind. The feminine element in the brilliant audience seemed curiously puzzled, and the Viscount's absence gave rise to any amount of whispering behind the fans. Christine Daae met with a rather cold reception. That special audience could not forgive her for aiming so low. The singer noticed this unfavorable attitude of a portion of the house and was confused by it. The regular frequenters of the opera, who pretended to know the truth about the Viscount's love story, exchanged significant smiles at certain passages in Margarita's part, and they made a showing of turning and looking at Philippe de Chagny's box when Christine sang, "I wish I could but know who he was that addressed me, if he was noble, or at least what his name is." The Count sat with his chin on his hand and seemed to pay no attention to these manifestations. He kept his eyes fixed on the stage, but his thoughts appeared to be far away. Christine lost her self-assurance more and more. She trembled. She felt on the verge of a breakdown. Carlotta Fontana wondered if she was ill, if she could keep the stage until the end of the garden act. In the front of the house, people remembered the catastrophe that had befallen Carlotta at the end of that act and the historic Coac, which had momentarily interrupted her career at Paris. Just then, Carlotta made her entrance in a box facing the stage, a sensational entrance. Poor Christine raised her eyes upon the fresh subject of excitement. She recognized her rival. She thought she saw a sneer on her lips that saved her. She forgot everything in order to triumph once more. From that moment, the prima donna sang with all her heart and soul. She tried to surpass all that she had done till then, and she succeeded. In the last act, when she began the invocation to the angels, she made all the members of the audience feel as they too had wings. In the center of the amphitheater, a man stood up and remained facing the singer. It was Raoul. Holy angel in heaven, blessed. And Christine, her arms outstretched, her throat filled with music, the glory of her hair falling over her bare shoulders, uttered the divine cry, "My spirit longs with thee to rest." It was at that moment that the stage suddenly plunged into darkness. It happened so quickly that the spectators hardly had time to utter a sound of stupefaction, for the gas at once lit up the stage again, but Christine Daae was no longer there. What had become of her? What was that miracle? All exchanged glances without understanding, and the excitement at once reached its height. Nor was the tension any less great on the stage itself. Men rushed from the wings to the spot where Christine had been singing that very instant. The performance was interrupted amid the greatest disorder. Where had Christine gone? What witchcraft had snatched her away before the eyes of thousands of enthusiastic onlookers, and from the arms of Carlos Fontana himself? It was as though the angels had already carried her up to rest. Raoul, still standing at the amphitheater, had uttered a cry. Count Philippe had sprung to his feet in his box. People looked at the stage, at the count, at Raoul, and wondered if this curious event was connected in any way with the paragraph of that morning's paper. But Raoul hurriedly left his seat. The count disappeared from the box, and while the curtain was lowered, the subscribers rushed to the door that led behind the scenes. The rest of the audience waited amid an indescribable hubbub. Everyone spoke at once. Everyone tried to suggest an explanation of the extraordinary incident. At last the curtain rose slowly, and Carlos Fontana stepped to the conductor's desk and, in a sad and serious voice, said, "Ladies and gentlemen, an unprecedented event has taken place and thrown us into a state of the greatest alarm. Our sister artist, Christine Daae, has disappeared before our eyes. Can anyone tell us how?" Chapter 14. The Singular Attitude of a Safety Pin. Behind the curtain, there was an indescribable crowd: artists, scene shifters, dancers, supers, choristers, subscribers. All were asking questions, shouting and hustling one another. "What became of her? She's run away. With the Vicomte de Chagny? Of course. No, with the Count. Ah, here's Carlotta. Carlotta did the trick." No, it was the ghost, and a few laughed, especially in a careful examination of the trapdoors and the boards had put the idea of an accident out of question. Amid this noisy throng, three men stood talking in a low voice with despairing gestures. They were Gabriel, the chorus master, Mercier, the acting manager, and Remy, the secretary. They retired to the corner of the lobby by the stage that communicates with the wide passage leading to the foyer of the ballet. Here they stood, argued behind some enormous properties. "I knocked at the door," said Remy. "They did not answer. Perhaps they were not in the office. In any case, it's impossible to find out, for they took the keys with them." They were obviously the managers who had given the orders during the last intracte, that they were not to be disturbed on any pretext whatsoever. They were not in to anybody. At the same time, exclaimed Gabriel, "a singer isn't run away with from the middle of the stage every day." "Did you shout that to them?" said the mercer impatiently. "I'll go back again," said Remy, and disappeared at a run. Thereupon the stage manager arrived. "Well, Monsieur Mercier, are you coming?" "What are you two doing here?" "You're wanted, Mr. Acting Manager." "I refuse to know or do anything before the commissary arrives," declared Mercier. "I have sent for Milford. We shall see when he comes. And I tell you that you ought to go down to the organ once more." "Not before the commissary comes." "I've been down to the organ myself already. And what did you see?" "Well, I saw nobody. Do you hear? Nobody. What do you want me to do when I go down there?" "What's there to go down for?" "You're right," said the stage manager, frantically pushing his hands through his rebellious hair. "You're right. but there might be someone at the organ who could tell us how the stage came to be suddenly darkened. Now, Mauclair is nowhere to be found. Do you understand that? Mauclair was the gas man who dispensed day and night at will on the stage of the opera. Mauclair is not to be found, repeated Mercier, taken aback. Well, what about his assistants? There's no Mauclair and no assistants. No one at the lights. I can tell you. You can imagine, roared the stage manager. That little girl must have been carried off by somebody else. She didn't run away. She didn't run away herself. It was a calculated stroke, and we had to find out about it. And what are the managers doing all this time? I gave orders that no one was to go down to the lights, and I posted a fireman in the front of the gas man's box beside the organ. Wasn't that right? Yes, quite right. And now, let's wait for the commissary. The stage manager walked away, shrugged his shoulders, fuming, muttering insults at those milksops who remained quietly squatting in a corner while the whole theater was topsy-turvy. Gabriel and Mercier were not so quiet at all, only they had received an order that paralyzed them. The managers were not to be disturbed on any account. Remy had violated that first order and did not meet with success. At that moment, he returned from his new expedition, wearing a curiously startled air. Well, have you seen them? Asked Mercier. Montcharan opened the door. Montcharan opened the door at last. His eyes were starting out from his head. I thought he meant to strike me. I could not get a word in. And what do you think? He shouted at me. Have you a safety pin? No. Well then, clear out. I tried to tell him that an unheard of thing had happened on stage, but when he roared, a safety pin, give me a safety pin at once, a boy heard him. He was bellowing like a bull, ran up to him with a safety pin, and gave it to him. Whether Montcharin slammed the door in my face, and there you were, and there you are. And couldn't you have said, Christine Day, that I should like to have seen you in my place? He was foaming at the mouth. He thought of nothing but his safety pin. I believe if they hadn't brought him one on the spot, he would have fallen down in a fit. Oh, all of this isn't natural, and managers are going mad. Besides, it can't go on like this. I'm not used to being treated in this fashion. Suddenly, Gabriel whispered, It's another trick of the OGs. Remy gave a grin, Mercier a sigh, and seemed to speak, but, meeting Gabriel's eyes, said nothing. However, Mercier felt the responsibility increased by the minutes passing without the manager appearing, and at last he could stand no longer. Look here, I'll go and hunt them out myself. Gabriel, turning very gloomy and very serious, stopped him. Be careful what you're doing, Mercier. If you're staying in the office, it's probably because they have to. OG has more than one trick up his bag. Mercier shook his head. That's their lookout. I'm going. If people had listened to me, the police would have known everything long ago. And he went. What's everything? Asked Remy. What was there to tell? The police, I mean. Why don't you answer, Gabriel? Oh, so you know something's coming? Or you think you just know something? Well, you would do better to tell me. I, too, if you don't want me to shout out all of all that are going mad. Yes, that's what you are, mad. Gabriel put on his stupid look and pretended not to understand the privacies of the secretary's unseemly outburst. What? Something I am supposed to know, he said. I don't know what you mean. Remy began to lose his temper. This evening, Richard and Montcharin were behaving like lunatics, here between the acts. I never noticed it, growled Gabriel, very much annoyed. Then you are the only one. Do you think that I didn't care to see him? And that Monsieur Perrones was a manager of the Credit Central, noticed nothing, and that M. de la Bordier, the ambassador, has no eyes to see with? Why, all the subsidies in the world were pointing to a few simple terms. But what were our managers doing? Asked Gabriel, putting on his innocent air. What were they doing? You know better than anyone what they were doing. You were there. And you were watching them. You and Mercier. And you were the only two who didn't laugh. I don't understand. Gabriel raised his arms and dropped them to his sides again, which gesture was meant to convey that the question did not interest him with the least. Remy continued. What is the sense of this new mania of theirs? Why won't they have anyone come near? What they won't have anyone come near them. And they won't let anyone won't let anyone touch them. Really, have you noticed that they won't let anyone touch them? That is certainly odd. Oh, so you admit that, and high time too. And then they walk backward. You have seen our managers walk backward. Why, I thought I only had crabs walked backward. I thought only the crabs walked backward. Don't laugh, Gabriel. Don't laugh. I'm not laughing, protested Gabriel, looking as solemn as a judge. Perhaps you can tell me this, Gabriel, as you are an intimate friend of the manager. When I went to Monsieur Richard outside the foyer during the garden interval with my hand out before me, why did Monsieur Montcharin hurriedly whisper to me, "Go away, go away! Whatever you do, don't touch Monsieur de la Recteur." Am I supposed to have an infectious disease? It's incredible. And a little later, when Monsieur de la Bordier went up to Monsieur Richard, didn't you see Monsieur Montcharin fling himself between them and hear him exclaim, "Monsieur l'ambassadeur, I entreat you not to touch Monsieur le Directeur." It's terrible. And what was Richard doing meanwhile? What was he doing? Why, you saw him. He turned about, bowed in front of him, though there was nobody in front of him, and withdrew backward. Backward. And Montcharin behind Richard also turned about. That is, he described a semicircle behind Richard and also walked backwards. And they went like that to the staircase leading to the manager's office, backward, backward, backward. Well, if they are not mad, will you explain what it means? Perhaps they were practicing a figure in the ballet, suggested Gabriel, without much conviction in his voice. The secretary was furious at this wretched joke, made at so dramatic a moment. He knit his brows and contracted his lips. Then he put his mouth to Gabriel's ears. "Don't be so sly, Gabriel. There are things going for you which you and Mercier are partly responsible." "What do you mean?" asked Gabriel. "Christine Daae is not the only one who suddenly disappeared tonight." "Oh, nonsense. There is no nonsense about it. Perhaps you can tell me why, when Mother Giry came down to the foyer just now, Mercier took her by the hand and hurried her away with him." "Really?" said Gabriel. "I never saw it." "You did see it, Gabriel, for you went with Mercier and Mother Giry to Mercier's office. Since then, you and Mercier have been seen, but no one has seen Mother Giry. Do you think we've eaten her? No, but you've locked her up in the office, and no one passing the office can hear her yelling, "Oh, the sounds of scoundrels! The scoundrels!" At this point, the singular conversation Mercier had with all his breath. "There," he said in a gloomy voice, "it's worse than ever." I shouted, "It's a tedious matter. Open the door. It is I, Mercier." I heard footprints on the steps. The door opened and Montcharnain disappeared. He was very simple and very pale. He said, "What do you want?" I answered, "Someone has run away with Christine Daae. What do you think he said? And a good job, too." And he shut the door after putting this in my hand. Mercier opened his hand. Remy and Gabriel looked at it. "The safety pin," said Remy. "Strange, strange," muttered Gabriel, who could not help shivering. Suddenly a voice made them all turn around. "I beg your pardon, gentlemen. Could you tell me where Christine Daae is?" In spite of the seriousness of the circumstances, the absurdity of the question would have made them roar with laughter if they had not caught sight of a face so sorrow-stricken that they were not at once seized with pity. It was the Vicomte Raoul de Chagny. And that, my friends, is the end of chapter 14. So we got through chapters 13 and 14 tonight. I'm going to stop here because I'm a little tired from being at Disneyland all day, and I need to now save and edit these two videos, these two chapters, into a singular video that I can upload so you can all see it at 6 p.m. All right, my friends, I want to thank you for being with me one more time. I will continue the Phantom of the Opera story on Monday, and if you're available on Sunday, come join me as I live stream at Disneyland and California Adventure. This has been Indiana Homes. Love to you all, and good night.
Please hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notifications button. Thank you very much.